Now, this is the comfort anime that I should have found when all three traumatized the hell out of me. If you don't know me, one thing you should know about me is I love retro gaming. I've only been to an arcade a handful of times in my life, but whenever I went to one during my childhood, it was definitely one of my favorite places to be on earth. And I still get that same feeling today when I stumble upon a random machine or even when I emulate games and use my arcade stick to play them on my computer. High School Girl is an anime that combines two of my favorite things, anime and retro gaming. So I was bound to watch this multiple times, so let's chop it up and talk about it. So, you know how we do things around here. We start off with the story. The story in this show is pretty straightforward and simple. Our story follows our main protagonist named Haruo, who's this diehard gamer who devotes his all to any game he plays, and pretty much any game he plays and pretty much any game he can get his hands on. One day he meets this rich girl in the arcade he usually goes to named Ono. Ono has this crazy natural talent for pretty much any game that they play, so they end up playing each other in Street Fighter 2, and he realizes Ono's talent firsthand because he gets his ass beat a few times before he gets a cheap dub. This makes him pretty curious about her though, and they end up running into each other pretty often at this point. So they eventually become close friends and they develop feelings for each other, and they bond with each other through the games that they play or watch each other play. The anime takes us through quite a few events throughout the gaming world as well, which is pretty cool. It takes us through the console releases and the big fighting game boom that hit all the arcades in the 90s. Ono doesn't say a word this entire series, so it's really up to Haruo to figure out what she's thinking or feeling. They eventually keep bonding and spending time with each other, but there's a problem. Ono's teacher. All my niggas hate Ono's teacher. Once again, all my niggas hate Ono's teacher. She's super strict and she made her fly to California to pursue a better education. While she's gone, a new girl named Hidaka gains admiration for Haruo and she wants to start playing games herself just to get his attention. But Haruo is completely oblivious, as all anime MCs are, and he's still thinking about Ono at this point. And speaking of Ono, a little while later, she comes back. Hidaka ends up playing Akuma against Ono, and Ono ends up smoking her shit. She declines the game against Haruo though, and Haruo ends up accidentally playing Final Fight with her. This is one of my favorite scenes in the show because this is one of the very few times we get to see Ono express herself outside of body language and facial expressions. Now mind you, Final Fight is a co-op game, but she was beating this nigga ass. She throwing knives at this nigga when he got low HP and she's sitting there waiting for him to pick up the health pickup, snatching them shits away from him. It's kind of cool because I believe Ono's mad because Haruo didn't really check for her when she came back and when she got back in Japan. They share another heartwarming moment after that Street Fighter tournament when they on that hill that's in every anime that's ever been made. Haruo finally lets out his feeling and realizes that Ono kept that ring he gave her before she left the first time. Whole time, I don't think it would have mattered if he checked for her though, I ain't gonna lie. Cause her teacher, once again, all my niggas hate Ono's teacher, has only gotten stricter at this point. She pressed too hard though because Ono ended up running away not too shortly after. Her teacher literally only made her life school and she had this little family name to live up to and she's doing it basically for her parents. That's why she's in school like this. She doesn't want to do this. Ono's driver ends up sending Haruo to find her. While this is going on, Hidaka is still trying to get in between the two, but Haruo's not folding at all. At the end of the show, Ono and Haruo have their final match before she moves overseas once again. And once again, all my niggas hate Ono's teacher. I'm gonna keep on saying that. Haruo loses and then leaves him depressed, so depressed to the point where he didn't want to do anything. But after some subtle motivation from Hidaka and Ono's sister, he ends up going to see her at the airport before she takes off again, vowing to keep the rivalry going, vowing to marry her when they meet again, vowing to get a passport to go see her. I was definitely here for like all the video game stuff in this story, but the love triangle thing they had going on was actually pretty good. And I watched this shit in dub, so it was a perfect amount of like cheesy and funny to keep me entertained. And I got more than enough video game stuff in this anime. They went through the shit that I didn't even think they would talk about, like the Virtual Boy, getting into Virtual Fighter, MK and Darkstalkers and shit like that. Shit was fascinating for real, but I definitely enjoyed how cheesy and fun the story was. I definitely enjoyed this show even after my third and fourth watch of this show. This show always like satisfied me. Now, move on to characters and character interactions. The characters in this show are written pretty well in my opinion. I think the character interactions feel really genuine. They're always entertaining. And they literally sound like gamers. They use a fighting game lingo and shit. Everything feels really natural in like a really nerdy way, which is cool because I'm a nerd. Haruo is a really good character with more to him than you get at the first glance. At first glance, he seems like an irresponsible gamer who abandons all his responsibilities and doesn't care about anything else, but you will actually be wrong. Haruo just deals with his problems as they come. If something requires attention, he's gonna give it the attention it needs. He has his priorities straight for the most part. When his grades were slipping and he was at that parent-teacher conference, he made a vow to his teacher, his mom, and himself that he was gonna put games down for a while until he fixes it. He also made a vow to Ono to try to get into the same high school as her, and he genuinely tried his hardest. He failed, but he still put his all into it. He deals with this whole love triangle in a very realistic way too, if I'm keeping it a bang. If you think about it, he's in a pretty rough situation. Look, He meets this girl, connects with this girl through the same thing that he loves the most in the world, which is video games. The girl that he likes has a guardian that doesn't like him at all and doesn't want her to see him at all. And she's super strict, so you don't even see her often because she basically controls her day-to-day activities. And she's always moving, so that's even more time apart, plus the inconsistent time that you get to see her to begin with. Then you got this other girl that you have absolutely no interest in that forced herself to make video games a common interest between you two, that wants you, and that'll never change because she's gonna be by your side, but she knows your feelings are already occupied at this point. She's forcing it. You have zero interest, but you still hang out with her because she's cool. There's a certain point where you take a step back and look at that situation and you like feel bad. And then the girl you actually love is now moving overseas at this point. Like, gang, that would definitely fuck with me. And honestly, it's already hard enough dealing with one girl, so you're definitely bound to make a mistake or two in this situation. And that's why I like Haruo. He dealt with this in the most human way possible, through trial and error. He wanted to run away, and gang, I don't blame that nigga. But he would rather not hurt both of them further and deal with like regret later on. I really appreciate how they wrote Haruo. He's a passionate nerd just like I am, and I think his writing stands out because how realistic his experience actually was. Ono didn't even have dialogue, and I still love her character. She doesn't even need to say anything. Haruo pretty much spends the whole time trying to figure out how she feels or what she's thinking, but she definitely still communicates even though she doesn't talk. We often see how she feels through various facial expressions or just actions in general. She a little violent motherfucker too. She got this nigga Haruo kidnapped so they can hang out at her crib. Like, you could have just invited me, my boy. Like, what you on? And like, she be beating his ass. I'm serious. She really be giving Haruo them bitches in this show for, I ain't gonna lie. In the game and outside the game. But she's a super cool character. She seems like the perfect being to Haruo and everyone around her. She's pretty, she's good at everything she does, she's rich, and she's really smart too. She's actually pretty strong-willed as well. Being put through all that rigorous tutoring and managing to somewhat function like a regular human being is beyond impressive in my opinion. But that's honestly where you start to see cracks in this perfect image that people have of her. She hates her situation in reality. She uses video games as escaping the bullshit she lives on a daily basis. She hates her tutor. She just wants to play games with Haruo, and that's really it. But everything else is getting in the way of that. She's actually really nice to understand until Hidaka was actually a really cool thing that I didn't expect. She viewed her as an actual friend at the end of the day. She want to keep her around regardless of the conflict and of interest in Haruo. And she like tested Hidaka to make sure that her feelings for Haruo were genuine because she cares about Haruo that much. So I think that was a cool little detail. Speaking of Hidaka's a pretty great character too. She's a really good influence on Haruo even through all their issues and problems. She's pretty stubborn about having Haruo, and it makes it a competition between her and Ono naturally, but she actually was cool enough to back down and play her role for some parts of this story. She genuinely cares about Haruo, and she was even strong enough to put her feelings aside and tell Haruo to go see Ono before she went overseas. And she gave Ono the blessing to go to Kyoto with Haruo alone. Hidaka's really cool. Ono's sister is really cool too. Ono's sister's really cool. She's definitely the more talkative one. She's very energetic, very expressive, and very animated as a character. Pretty funny too. Her interactions with Haruo are really cool because she has the perfect balance of care for him and care for her sister. And she's like a big part of the comedy in this show, so I definitely enjoy whenever she's on the screen. Haruo's mom is funny as hell. She a cool ass mom. She always be looking out for him, and she try to make like a soap opera out of his life, which is pretty funny. I'm not gonna lie. She be beating Haruo ass too. Like, she really German suplex that nigga, and that shit look like it hurt. Ono's driver is a really great character. Ono's driver is my nigga because he has Ono's like best interest in mind, even when sometimes that could be risky. He constantly bends the rules for Ono, and he's one of the only adults around her that knows what makes her happy and lets her experience it as often as he can at that point. He even put his job on the line for her. I definitely like her driver. Ono's driver is really cool. And once again, in case you forgot, all my niggas hate Ono's teacher. All my niggas hate her. Overall, the character writing in High School Girl is pretty impressive. I'm not gonna lie, it's probably one of the last shows that I would expect to have this good at writing. I thought this would be kind of like a novelty type show, but I ended up getting way more than I expected. Thank you to all the voice actors on the vocal work for this. And I watched dubs. I watched dub on this. I watched English dub. And this is definitely 1000% one of the better dubs out there. They did a really good job on this. Now, move on to looks, presentation, and music. Seeing a lot of people complaining about the CGI in this show, and I don't have a problem with it at all. I don't know what people are complaining about. I really only have a problem with CGI when it looks like really unnatural and stiff. This isn't like bad in my opinion. And honestly, when CGI models are doing something like very basic, like they're not doing any crazy movements like in the action sequence or anything like that, I don't really mind that either. They're just playing video games or walking around in this show, so the animations aren't that complex flex. And they did good on the facial expressions too, so I don't really care. This show is like very reminiscent of shows like Holyoke, in my opinion, and this show looks pretty solid to me. I don't see what people are complaining about. Show looks good in my opinion. The character design doesn't bother me either. I see a lot of people say that they look like Rugrats characters, but I don't care. Like, you just find shit to complain about. Definitely shout out to the animators of the show and the artists of the manga. Don't listen to them niggas. People just like complaining about shit. Y'all did a really good job on this. Now, this is one of the rare moments where presentation is probably one of my favorite things in the anime. The presentation is one of my favorite things about this show. The amount of scenes where video game stages are implemented into the scene is crazy, and I love every single one of them. And there's a lot of them. It's not just in the actual show too, it's in the OPs as well. They show all the characters in the beginning OP, the first one, and the OG Street Fighter 2 character select screen, this nigga Haruo, and they get like a small detail, they get like alternate costumes and shit. I was like, man, this is so cool. That nigga Haruo just be sitting there talking to Guile and Zangief and all these other video game characters, like the actual 2D sprites on the screen. At the end when Ono was leaving, they had that little emotional ass moment. They had all the 2D sprites cheer on Haruo. I was like, man, this shit is amazing. Like, this made my nerdy ass so happy, dog. It's so charming and it's so unique, and I'm glad they were actually able to use like the actual characters from these games. It made it feel so much more authentic. Shit, it made me nerd out a lot, and I really appreciate the presentation in this show. Like, I really love it. The music is pretty decent in this show too. It's not too distracting, and it doesn't take away from the scenes, and it only adds to the emotional tone of the scenes, which is a simple recipe that every anime should follow. And once again, a damn piano. Y'all did a really good job at making these emotional ass moments with these slow ass piano tracks. It's the same track, but it's good. It's really good. It really does what it's supposed to do, and it does it really well. The OPs in the show are good too. I love all the video game sound effects they implement into this. This show has so many familiar sounds from my childhood that gave me huge hits of nostalgia over and over and over again. Shout out to all the musicians and the Foley artists that worked on this, and the digital sound creators too. This is my comfort anime now, gang. I'm not gonna lie. I love this anime. I've already watched it like 3 or 4 times now, and I'm gonna revisit it again one day. When I watched it the first time, I was really expecting a lot of like forced and cringy dialogue about fighting games and arcade games, but this anime delivered a great story, great characters, and great character writing, and it felt natural all the way through. You can tell that the creators and the contributors to this anime actually love retro gaming. They actually put a lot of love into this. I see why Evo backed this. This show isn't really for everyone though, in my opinion. I think older anime watchers will enjoy this, or if you like arcade games like me, but there's something to appreciate for everyone, I think. If you like generic, if you like your basic slice of life anime, I think you will like this one. And plus, especially if you're a nerd like me, I really appreciate all the old arcade game stuff and all the Street Fighter stuff that was in this. This is really good. But I mean, give it a shot. Like, see if you like it or not. I think you would. I think this is a really good show, man. It really scratched that itch that I had. This is a pretty unique one too. This is like a one-on-one thing. I haven't seen another anime like this. And like, it was good. It was actually really good. Usually when the stuff is back, when stuff like this is created, it's kind of like, you would kind of think that it's going to be like cheap and like novelty and like not that much effort and love are put into this, but they actually did a really good job on this show. Like, I'm actually pleasantly surprised, and I actually love this anime. I've seen this anime 4 times now, bro. 4 times, and there's some shit that I never thought I would watch. Like, I'm a former like action junkie. I used to just watch action anime over and over and over again. I've seen this like 4 times now, dog, and it satisfied me every single time. I love the characters in this show. I love the dialogue in this show. I love the comedy of this show. The looks of this show, they look good to me. They don't bother me. Like, this show is good, man. Watch High School Girl, man. Forget all that. Watch this show. I definitely recommend it, bro. I think you'll have a good time with this. And it's approachable for everyone. Even if you're not the biggest fighting game nerd, I think the story is good enough to satisfy any anime watcher, or any slice of life watcher, I should say. I don't think regular action junkies are just gonna watch this. But if you feel like trying something new, I think you will like this. I think it's pretty good. But that's all for me though, man. As always, man, have a great day. Peace.